It was a quiet Saturday morning on May 5th, 2018, in the small suburban town of Greenville, Ohio. People were out enjoying the spring weather, and many had set up yard sales to clear out clutter, hoping to make a few bucks. But for Lindsay Caldwell, it would be the last time she'd set up a garage sale. Welcome to Echoes of Fear, your haven for the most terrifying mysteries and the most disturbing true crime stories. In today's video, I bring you real-life crime tales that challenge human comprehension and continue to haunt our minds, even after time has passed. Get ready for a dark and unsettling journey, where the line between reality and fear becomes ever thinner. If you have the courage, settle in, because today's stories will haunt your mind, and who knows, maybe even your dreams. Lindsay, a 32-year-old local resident, had always been known as friendly and outgoing. She was an elementary school teacher and had a knack for finding hidden gems in thrift stores, often flipping items at her weekend sales. That particular Saturday, she was hosting one of her usual sales at her home on Maple Street, a quiet neighborhood just a few blocks away from the town's bustling main street. The address was 124 Maple Street. Lindsay's garage was filled with everything from old furniture to vintage clothing, books, and small electronics. It was a usual sale for her, and there had been a steady flow of traffic throughout the morning. Neighbors had stopped by, including Amanda Richards, who lived 2 houses down from Lindsay. Amanda was one of the last people to interact with Lindsay before the tragic events unfolded. "I remember seeing her that morning," Amanda recalled during her police interview. "She was smiling, as usual, chatting with a couple of people. She seemed happy. I didn't think anything was out of the ordinary." But Amanda wasn't the only one who noticed something strange that morning. Another neighbor, Joseph Walker, had stopped by to buy a lamp. Joseph was known to be an avid collector of vintage items, and he had attended several of Lindsay's sales in the past. "I didn't stay long, maybe 20 minutes, Joseph said, recounting his visit. "But I remember there was this guy lurking in the back corner of the driveway. He wasn't buying anything, just standing there, watching her. It was weird. I figured he was just another curious shopper, but he didn't seem to be interested in anything she was selling." Joseph didn't know who the man was, but the unsettling feeling stuck with him. Later that afternoon, the situation would turn much darker. At approximately 3:30 p.m., as the sun began to dip lower in the sky, Lindsay was found unconscious in her garage by a passerby. The discovery sent shockwaves through the quiet town. The passerby, Helen Montgomery, had been walking her dog when she saw Lindsay slumped over in the garage. "I thought she was just taking a break," Helen recalled. "But when I got closer, I saw the blood on the ground, and I knew something was very wrong." Lindsay had been brutally attacked. She had multiple stab wounds, and there were signs of a violent struggle. Police were immediately called to the scene, and the once peaceful neighborhood was thrown into chaos. Detective Clara Jennings was the lead investigator assigned to the case. She arrived at the scene shortly after the first responders, and she immediately began to take in the details. The scene was eerie. Everything seemed untouched, almost like the attacker had been interrupted. The garage was a mess, with boxes and items strewn about, but nothing seemed to be missing. No cash, no valuables, not even Lindsay's car. Though a first step in the investigation was interviewing witnesses. The police questioned those who had been at the garage sale that day. No one had seen anything suspicious, but they did get conflicting reports about the strange man Joseph had mentioned. He was tall, probably in his late 40s or early 50s, Joseph said. He was wearing a gray hoodie and dark sunglasses, but he didn't seem to fit in. He kept watching her, and then he left as soon as I did. When Detective Jennings checked the footage from a security camera that had been installed on the house next door, she found something chilling. The camera had captured a blurry figure lurking near the garage at 2:55 p.m., just moments before Lindsay was attacked. The man was seen talking to Lindsay for a brief moment before she turned and walked toward the back of the garage. The man followed her, disappearing behind the structure just seconds later. The footage was grainy, but it was enough to confirm that Lindsay and the man had interacted before the attack. What was unclear was the motive. Was it a robbery gone wrong? Or had Lindsay known the attacker? As the investigation progressed, Detective Jennings ordered a forensic examination of the garage and the surrounding area. There were bloodstains found in several places within the garage, suggesting a violent altercation. However, there was one piece of evidence that caught the investigators' attention: a receipt. It was wedged between two old magazines on a shelf, partially hidden under a pile of clothes. The receipt was from a local pawn shop in town, dated just 2 days before the murder. The items on the receipt were puzzling: a vintage watch and a set of diamond earrings. Was this the work of a random thief? Or was there something more to the story? Was the pawn shop connected to the man seen at the garage sale? These were the questions that haunted Detective Jennings as she pieced together the puzzle. The next step would be to trace the receipt to the person who sold the items. Who would be selling expensive items like those? And what was their connection to Lindsay Caldwell? As Detective Clara Jennings dug deeper into the mystery of Lindsay Caldwell's murder, every step of the investigation seemed to unearth more questions than answers. With no obvious suspects and limited physical evidence, the case quickly grew more complex. The pawn shop lead. The receipt found in the garage was a crucial piece of evidence. Detective Jennings immediately contacted Sam's Pawn and Jewelry, a small pawn shop located just off Main Street in Greenville. The receipt listed a vintage Rolex watch and a set of diamond earrings as the items sold just 2 days before Lindsay's murder. The buyer had been listed only as CJ, a name that was frustratingly vague. Pawn shops keep records of transactions. Jennings explained to her team, "If we can find out who CJ is, maybe we can make a connection." The pawn shop owner, Sam Fletcher, was cooperative. "I remember the guy who sold me those items. He was a regular, came in a couple of times a week, seemed a little off, but he always had cash on him. He went by Charlie, didn't give his last name, just Charlie." "Can you describe him?" Jennings asked, feeling a spark of hope. "He was in his 40s or 50s, medium build, kinda scruffy, wore a hoodie a lot, even when it was hot outside. He didn't seem like the type to buy jewelry, more like someone trying to unload stuff fast." Jennings made a mental note. This matched the description of the man seen lurking near the garage. Charlie. This could be the breakthrough she needed. Tracking Charlie. The investigation team quickly pulled surveillance footage from the pawn shop, but it didn't provide much more than a blurry image of a man fitting the description. The footage wasn't clear enough to pinpoint any significant features, but it was enough to know that Charlie had been frequenting the shop and was selling valuable items that had likely been stolen. Jennings's next step was to track down any local records for a person named Charlie, who might match this description. Using a combination of public records and the pawn shop's transaction logs, her team found a Charlie Walker. He had a criminal history dating back to the early 2000s, mostly for petty thefts and drug-related offenses. Nothing too serious, but enough to raise suspicion. Jennings ordered a full background check on Charlie Walker and had officers send out a search warrant to his last known address in a rundown neighborhood just outside of Greenville. A breakthrough in forensics as the investigation into Charlie Walker intensified. There was another crucial development. The forensic report from Lindsay's garage came in. The bloodstains in the garage were consistent with a struggle, but there was something even more alarming. The blood didn't belong to just one person. It contained a mix of 2 different DNA profiles. One of the profiles belonged to Lindsay, but the second profile was a mystery. A male's DNA which did not match any of the initial suspects, including Lindsay's ex-husband, who had been cleared earlier in the investigation. This new lead pointed to the possibility of a second, previously unknown person being involved in the attack. 2 DNA profiles. Jennings muttered to herself, frustration creeping into her voice. Who was with her in that garage? Witnesses revisited. With this new information, Detective Jennings revisited the witnesses who had been at the garage sale that day. Joseph Walker The neighbor who had described the strange man lurking near the garage was brought in for another round of questioning. "When you said the guy was watching her, what do you mean?" Jennings asked, probing deeper. Was he talking to her? Or just staring? Joseph seemed uneasy. "Well, he was talking to her for a second, but it was nothing. Like, I don't know. It was weird. She didn't seem scared or anything. But then he just walked off, like he was waiting for something." Jennings's mind raced. If Charlie Walker was the man in the security footage and the man Joseph had seen, it would mean he'd been lurking him to talk to her without reacting in fear. The connection between Charlie and Lindsay. The next key break came when Detective Jennings discovered something chilling. Lindsay Caldwell and Charlie Walker had crossed paths before. A search through Lindsay's old Facebook messages revealed a conversation she had with a person named Charlie from several months earlier. They had messaged back and forth about a set of vintage jewelry that Lindsay had been selling online. Charlie had been interested in the jewelry, but the conversation abruptly ended when Lindsay decided to hold on to the items for a while longer. But that wasn't the most disturbing part. The message history revealed that Charlie had also asked Lindsay personal questions about her work, her family, and her neighborhood. At one point, he had asked her where she lived, and then the messages stopped. The search for Charlie Walker. By now, it was clear that Charlie Walker was more than just a random pawnshop customer. He had been actively engaging with Lindsay in the months leading up to her death, and his sudden reappearance at her garage sale was no coincidence. Jennings's team raided Charlie's house, but he was gone. No trace of Charlie Walker was found, but the unsettling fact remained. He had known too much about Lindsay's life. "Where is he?" Jennings muttered, her mind racing. "And what's his connection to the murder?" The silent witness. As the search for Charlie intensified, there was one more critical piece of the puzzle that had gone unnoticed. The dog. Helen Montgomery, the passerby who had discovered Lindsay's body, mentioned in her original statement that she had seen a dog wandering near the garage that day. It wasn't Lindsay's dog, but a large black lab. At first, it seemed irrelevant, but after further investigation, Jennings realized the dog might have been an accidental witness to the crime. Tracking the dog's movements led police to a nearby abandoned building, where they found the dog tied up, but no sign of Charlie. Was this dog involved in the mystery? And did it know where Charlie had gone? With each passing hour, the case grew colder, but Detective Jennings was more determined than ever to find Charlie Walker. The clock was ticking, and the deeper they dug, the darker the connections became. Could they uncover the truth before Charlie disappeared for good? The search for Charlie Walker had grown more desperate. The police scoured every lead, combed through Charlie's past, and interrogated anyone who might have known him. But despite their efforts, he had vanished without a trace. Then, just as the investigation was losing momentum, Detective Clara Jennings received an unexpected call from the local animal shelter. They had found the black lab, the same dog Helen Montgomery had seen near the garage that day. The shelter worker explained that the dog had been found tied to a fence near an old, abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of Greenville, not far from where Charlie's last known address was. The dog had been well fed but appeared anxious, almost as though it had been left in a hurry. Could this be a clue? Jennings immediately sent a team to investigate the area. As they combed through the warehouse, the officers found something chilling. A set of bloody clothes hidden inside a storage locker. The clothes matched the description of what Charlie had been wearing during the pawnshop transaction: a gray hoodie and dark jeans. But what really shook Jennings was the discovery of a blood-stained knife wrapped carefully inside the hoodie. At this point, the investigation seemed clear. Charlie Walker was the one who had attacked Lindsay. But the question remained: why? And why had he fled? Detective Jennings wasn't convinced that the case was closed yet. Something still didn't add up. She decided to take a closer look at Charlie's background once more. This time, Focusing on his family ties, a deep dive into his past uncovered a shocking revelation. Charlie Walker had a sister, Emily Walker, who lived just outside of Greenville. Emily had never been mentioned in any of the earlier reports. Jennings arranged for an interview. When she arrived at Emily's house, Jennings was greeted by a calm, collected woman in her early 40s. Emily had a quiet, almost eerie demeanor. As Jennings began to question her about Charlie, Emily's responses were cryptic. "I haven't spoken to Charlie in years," Emily said flatly. "I don't know where he is, or why he would be involved in something like this." But Jennings noticed something in Emily's eyes, a flicker of guilt, a momentary hesitation before the words came. It was too subtle to be accidental. "Tell me about his relationship with Lindsay." Jennings probed further. Emily paused. "Charlie, he didn't know how to let things go. He'd get obsessed with things, people." Jennings's pulse quickened. Obsessed, the pieces were falling into place. Suddenly, her face going pale. Without missing a beat, she turned to Jennings. "Excuse me, I need to take this call." Jennings's instincts kicked in. She subtly reached for Emily's phone and, in a split second, saw the name on the screen. Charlie Walker. Before Emily could react, Jennings grabbed the phone. The voice on the other end was distorted, but it was unmistakable. It was Charlie. "Jennings," Charlie said in a low, gravelly tone. "You're getting too close. You should have stayed out of it." Jennings's heart raced. "Where are you, Charlie?" There was a long silence, and then a single word. "You're too late." The line went dead. With this revelation, everything came into sharp focus. Emily Walker wasn't just an innocent bystander. She had been helping Charlie. It wasn't about a random attack or a pawnshop transaction. The entire thing had been a carefully calculated plan. Charlie had become obsessed with Lindsay, and Emily had been covering for him. The garage sale was just a setup, a final attempt to finish what they had started months earlier. Charlie wasn't just trying to steal from Lindsay. He had planned to kill her all along, and Emily had been the one to ensure Lindsay's movements were predictable. She had helped him stalk her, providing information about Lindsay's schedule, even mentioning the garage sale. With the truth exposed, the final twist was revealed. Charlie Walker was never alone. His obsession wasn't just about Lindsay. He had a partner in crime all along. Emily Walker, his own sister, had been orchestrating everything. They had planned to kill Lindsay together, and Charlie had followed through with the attack. But, in a shocking turn of events, the real killer was revealed. Emily, who had been feeding false information to Charlie, misdirecting the investigation. She had framed her own brother. As Emily was taken into custody, Jennings felt the weight of the case lift. The truth was darker and more twisted than she could have imagined. A sibling bond so warped by obsession. A murder disguised as a simple robbery gone wrong. But the most chilling part? Charlie Walker was never the mastermind. He was just a pawn in Emily's game. The true evil lay in the mind of a sister who had planned it all along. And as Detective Jennings walked away from the case, the final words on the phone call echoed in her mind. "You're too late." Well, folks, those were today's disturbing stories. I hope they've stirred your emotions and made you reflect on the dark mysteries that surround us. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and hit the bell so you don't miss the next chilling tales. And of course, if you have the courage, we'll see you in the next video here on Echoes of Fear. Stay alert and sweet dreams, if you can sleep.